about 4 a.m. right now. I was woken up by a loud siren noise, and then I got these messages on my phone telling me that a fleet of drones is going across Ukraine, specifically to Lviv right now. Stay in a shelter.
Millions of Russians and Ukrainians to continue to die for this absolutely needless, pointless conflict. This ridiculous conflict that never should have began. Why do you choose to stay here?
Why would I leave the perfect country, right? I think it's my home, my family is here, my life is here, my friends are here. I wouldn't want to trade that for safety.
Хот-дог, сосиска.
Окей. Один готов.
Одну. Хот-дог.
Это.
Сосиску.
Это сосиску. Okay.
Even though Ukraine is the war zone, it was much easier to travel Ukraine than Russia. While I was in Russia, I admit my naivety. What I didn't expect was that the conflict would reach me in a personal way as soon as I got to Lviv. The Russians launched that massive attack on the city.
Tommy Sabbatical is a well-known travel blogger and one of the very few people in the world who within a single year managed to visit both Russia and Ukraine. That combination is not common unless you're an American diplomat, let's say. So what does Ukraine feel like to Tommy during a full-scale war? Why does he say he will never return to Russia? Tommy, welcome to the studio. Hi.
Thank you very much for having me. Дякую.
Tommy, I want to start with something pleasant for the beginning. And your visit to Ukraine ended not so long time ago. And in one of your videos, you said that many people do not read articles deeply and do not see the bigger picture of Russia's war against Ukraine. And after your travels, what did you discover for yourself? What that is a bigger picture through Tommy Sabbatical's eyes?
Well, I think it's very important that people pay attention to what media they're consuming, because there's a lot of bias, there's a lot of propaganda, let's put it more directly, coming from Russia, for example. And you could have certain narratives being pushed, and people don't even understand that these are lies being told to them. So Russian propaganda, for example, over the past couple of years has made it seem like this war was started by NATO, this war was started by, I don't know, Europe and America pushing Ukraine to fight Russia. All kinds of like things that are completely untrue, like that Ukrainians are Nazis and stuff like that. And with just basic fact checking, you could realize that that's not true. And going to Ukraine myself, that was the ultimate revelation, and seeing how different Ukraine is from what you see in the media, but in a different way. I imagined, having never been to Ukraine because of the current conflict, I thought all of Ukraine was just, a giant war zone right now, that there were just constantly missiles going overhead. And of course, sadly, there are almost nightly drone attacks from Russia. But what I never expected was that I would arrive in Lviv and Kiev and Odessa and see that people were still trying to live their lives normally. There were, restaurants open, there were bars open, there were even parties and stuff. And it felt very surreal to me, but I completely understand the Ukrainians have to go on with their lives in spite of what's going on. So I think that's something you only understand when you go to Ukraine yourself.
Yeah, true. I was watching all of your videos and I was thinking, oh my God, he just mentioned everything that is happening in Ukraine's daily life. And to be honest, even after 4 years of full-scale invasion, I found also so surreal situations happening with me. Like, for instance, today, we were having rockets about our heads, and I was late for some beauty procedure, and I was thinking, okay, I have to stay at home, but no, I'm gonna be late, so I have to run. Okay, maybe this time I'm gonna stay alive, God is with me, and I'm just running to the metro. And so this is the reality we have. You're just not, you don't choose anymore, it's just, you're not choosing to stay alive or not. You're choosing between to be late or stay alive. Just some things that don't have to be, next to each other.
Right. Yeah, that's a perfect example. There's people in America and basically every other country in the world who have the same concerns that you do. Like, oh, I had a beauty appointment. I have to meet my friend at this restaurant or whatnot. But they don't have to do it with the threat of, drones overhead or, missiles coming at the city. And the fact that Ukrainians are able to go on with their lives and with the same kind of resolve that you just had, saying, maybe I'll be alive this time, as you clearly were. The bravery that you have to show just going about your regular life, I find it really admirable, and it was the thing I was most impressed by when I was in Ukraine.
Yeah, thank you for that. Tommy, you began your journey in Ukraine in the city of Mukachevo, which the city I was born, and finished in Odessa.
Oh, really?
Yes, and in several cities you said, well, you actually already mentioning that you had the feeling of safety changes as you move closer to the east and the south. What did that teach you about this war? How did it shape your understanding of how Ukrainians live today?
That's a good question. Yeah, I liked Mukachevo and the Carpathian region of Ukraine, as I'm sure many Ukrainians do, as it's very peaceful. The war barely touches that region. And it gave me almost like a false sense of security. I didn't hear any alarms when I was there. But I had always heard that obviously the closer you get to the front lines of the war, the more dangerous it becomes. You have less time to react, run to a shelter. What I didn't expect was that the conflict would reach me in a personal way as soon as I got to Lviv, because Lviv was supposed to be, a safe city, or at least I was told that. But of course, when I was there, the Russians launched that massive attack on the city. I believe it was the largest one in total ever on Lviv up until that point. And, being woken up at 3 a.m. and then having to go to a shelter and stay there for 4 hours, that very much brought me into the conflict and understanding what life was like there. And then going to Kiev and then Odessa, again, it just, you have to live with the reality that because of the shorter distance from Russia, from Crimea, they can launch the missiles much faster, like the drones can arrive much faster, and you almost have to develop a sense of, I don't want to say nihilism, but a sense that, the probability that you'll actually be hit is quite low, and you just have to be brave and go on with your day.
Yeah, you're right. And now, if we compare this experience with your experience traveling inside Russia, where did you feel freedom of movement, freedom of speech?
Oh, yeah. Well, traveling in Russia was obviously very different. I was amazed at how, even though Ukraine is the war zone, it was much easier to travel Ukraine than Russia, because, arriving in Russia, first of all, I don't have any money because Russia's under sanctions, and it's extremely difficult to, you have to literally set up a bank account there and then exchange money and then put it in there. And then it's a giant hassle just to pay for anything. And then while in Russia, I had to constantly worry about, going to a restricted area, going to, I don't know, accidentally saying something I shouldn't. There's the dictatorship in Russia obviously is getting more and more strict as time goes on. I believe just recently they decided to create like their own version of WhatsApp, which is of course controlled directly by the government. You don't have any kind of freedom of speech in Russia, and you have to, I guess people just eventually learn to live with that. Whereas in Ukraine, obviously you could say anything. You can discuss any kind of problem, even if it's a problem on the Ukrainian side. And in order to have the best country possible, I think that's what you need.
Absolutely. And in Russia, you faced detentions, interrogations, and accusations, and you explaining everything about that in your YouTube channel. How did these experiences change the way you look at traveling to countries with authoritarian regimes?
Well, it definitely changed the way I view countries with authoritarian regimes. It is, I always would say in my videos that, governments are governments, people are people, but sometimes you can't help it. The government comes to you. And that's basically what happened in Russia, doing pretty much nothing wrong, being put in jail for 2 absolutely fake crimes, being told that just because I called the Russian invasion into Ukraine an invasion, that's a crime. Life is just very different in a non-free society. When you're in a country with a functioning democracy, with a functioning and fair legal system, if you haven't committed a crime, then that you at least have the right to a fair trial and whatnot, and you can travel a lot more comfortably. But, in countries like Russia, and I do think, unfortunately, the world is going in a direction where countries like Russia are becoming more strict, more authoritarian, more dictatorial. You either have to accept their view on the world, buy into their ideology, and keep your mouth shut, or you will have a real problem. And because of this, I always I have a strong sense of ethics, and I don't want to compromise that, not even for money. So it will change the way I travel in the future. And there are multiple countries that, as much as I wanted to visit in the coming years, I don't think I will be.
Yeah, but watching your work,
waiting a long time before I go.
Yeah, but watching your work on YouTube, you're realizing that Tommy is going to the places that not everybody dare to. So that's the impression that you have from your YouTube channel. But I was thinking, Tommy, so despite the full-scale invasion and Russia's status as an aggressor state, you still continued visiting Russia. And did you fully understand the risks on you and this very serious political context?
Well, while I was in Russia, I admit my naivety. I was trying to do, it sounds ridiculous knowing the war going on, but I was trying to do a trip overland from Europe to East Asia. And because of that, I ended up traveling through Russia. And I did not start to get a sense, unfortunately, of just how brutal that government could be until I re-entered Russia from China, which is an area where I believe they very rarely, if ever, get foreigners crossing, that is non-Chinese foreigners. And so they interrogated me for hours. They made me fear that they were going to throw me in prison right there. And at that point, I knew that this was not a normal country, and I had made a huge mistake by going there. And I should have turned around right after that. instead, I kept going, and just a few days after that, the Russian FSB arrested me on assumption of being a spy or hoping to find drugs on me. And I had to forcefully learn my lesson about Russia by spending 17 days in jail.
Yeah, it's very good, to be honest, that you have been released. That's what I was thinking while I was watching your videos, that good you didn't end up in the jail in Russia like a lot of foreigners do. You know, Tommy, I was thinking about the audience, how the Russian audience was reacting on your conclusion about your visit to Russia, and of course how the Ukrainians were reacting. I bet you're checking the feedback from in the comments.
Yeah, that was unfortunate, and it was very shocking. It's almost, for some people in that country, it's as soon as you bring up politics, as soon as you say something that goes against the way they imagine the world, which is mostly shaped by Russian media, all of a sudden they decide you're an enemy. So something funny that happened was, after I began talking about what happened to me in Russia, talking about how I was put in jail for doing nothing wrong, people living in Russia, even some foreigners living in Russia with small YouTube channels, they decided to start attacking me, saying that like I was lying, that I made this story up, that or that I like deserved to be in prison, you know, just for whatever crazy logic they had. And I noticed a lot of Russian commenters also. They decided that either I deserved to be in prison or that I was making this story up somehow. And it was just very sad. It's, you know, my videos in Russia before that were very non-political. You know, I know how much that can like divide people, so I usually try to avoid that. But you know, even in spite of that, you know, it's just, I guess if you live in Russia, you just can't understand like that this government will put you in jail even if you've done nothing wrong. And that was a very sad thing to realize.
Yes. You know, I was thinking that probably you have heard about the corruption scandal in Ukraine that happened recently. That there was a, you know, it's a huge thing. But my question for you, not about the scandal itself, but you visited a lot of countries. I personally, I don't know how many, but you visited a lot of countries. And have you seen corruption in other countries? And what is the best approach from your perspective to fight with it?
That's an interesting question. Of course, corruption, I think, exists around the world, even in the most developed countries in the world. It's a lot worse in some other countries. I have some videos of traveling around Africa where I have to pay like bribes to certain police and stuff like that.
Oh, classy.
Yeah, so stuff like that. Ukraine, I don't think that would ever be a problem, but especially for countries that are still developing economically, you know, corruption remains a problem. And I think I am certainly not an expert on this, but I imagine just having a transparent legal system, like a fair justice system, and most importantly, a fair system of journalism that is a free press, you know, having media that is free to report on any corruption that's going on in the country. I think that's how you eventually get rid of a problem like that. And that's why I was very proud of Ukraine, in spite of the corruption scandal, because people were talking about it. People were trying to figure out how to avoid this again in the future. And I think corruption will slowly disappear in Ukraine over time.
Yeah, and speaking about the freedom of press, actually, you know, after this scandal, to be honest, you're opening social media, you're opening newspapers, and Tommy, you cannot imagine how many investigations, opinions you can read about the corruption scandal. It's almost impossible under the dictatorship. So just an interesting food for thought that Ukraine is a pure democracy, indeed, and we have this. I think, as a journalist, that we have this freedom of press 100%. Well, 90%, let's say.
I would agree.
Yeah, and Tommy, I want to ask something. Probably it's personal, maybe not. But what is Ukraine for you now? Because at the beginning of our conversation, you told me I was not imagining. I didn't have this whole picture of this country.
Ukraine feels a lot more personal to me now. It feels, obviously, it can never feel, I'm not sure I could ever feel as deeply about Ukraine as Ukrainians themselves, but I met so many kind people when I was there. I didn't have like a single problem with anyone there. And just the Ukrainian spirit, a lot of people, they're a little bit shocked when they arrive in a country like Ukraine and nobody's smiling or anything because of the Slavic culture. But, I knew that like once you get to know Ukrainians, they're like very, very kind. And I made a lot of friends while I was there, friends that I actually want to go back and visit when I get the chance, whether the war continues or not. I do want to go back and visit them. So, as I tried to say in my outgoing message in my video, I truly believe Ukraine is one of the great nations on the planet. You really have everything there. You got the mountains, you got the sea, you got the plains, beautiful cities. But the most important thing about Ukraine is the people. And they're some of the kindest people I've met anywhere in the world.
Do you plan, as you said, you have a lot of friends, do you plan to come back? And if you do, what city impressed you the most? Was that some city on the west of Ukraine, or was it Odessa or Kyiv?
I don't want to start like any fights here between the cities.
No. So no, we will start a fight without even you, Tommy. So just go ahead. We're always, that's gonna happen all the time.
Sure. Well, I genuinely liked all of the cities I went to, including your birthplace of Mukachevo, even though that one was a little more calm. But if I had to pick one favorite, it's really hard. It's really hard because I feel like Kiev, you have so much going on there. That's the big city. That's where, probably everyone you want to meet is there. But Odessa is very beautiful. But I think if I had to pick one, I did like Lviv. It's just a very beautiful city. People were nice. Other than just getting bombed during one night, I don't really have any bad memories there at all. It was just, it's the kind of city I'd be happy to go back to.
Yeah. We're happy to welcome you here. And of course, we have the best, from my perspective, the best food. The quality of food is extremely good in Ukraine. So I think but it's not like because of the food, but it's one of the reasons to come back, and the landscapes and everything you mentioned.
Definitely have the best borscht. And I now know that borscht is from Ukraine. So best borscht in the world, for sure.
Thank you so much, Tommy. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your very sincere answers to our studio, to our audience. And I hope to see you again sometime.
Thank you so much for having me.